Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. You know what I find very fascinating? The Dancing Plague. The Dancing Plague of 1518 is one of the most thoroughly documented and terrifying anomalies in medical history, rather than a light-hearted folk myth. Primary municipal sources, physician notes, and regional chronicles confirm it was a brutal, agonizing psychological contagion. At its peak in August 1518, the crisis claimed an estimated 15 lives per day due to heart attacks, strokes, dehydration, and sheer physical trauma. The epidemic did not begin as a group event. It was catalyzed by a single individual experiencing a profound psychological rupture. On July 14, 1518, Frau Trophaea stepped out of her half-timbered party, home onto the narrow cobblestones of Strasbourg. According to later writings by Renaissance physician Paracelsus, her behavior was preceded by intense domestic friction and an implied rebellion against her husband. Trophaea did not dance with joy or standard rhythm. Her movements were violent, spasmodic, and convulsive. Her face was described as mask-like and blank, completely unresponsive to onlookers or her husband's desperate pleas to stop. She danced continuously through the blistering midsummer heat for 6 full days. She collapsed repeatedly into pools of her own sweat and unconsciousness, only to wake up hours later and immediately resume the frantic choreography on swollen, bloody feet. Within 4 days of Trophaea being physically removed by authorities, 34 other residents had spontaneously succumbed to the exact same motor compulsion. By the end of July, the number of choreomaniacs ballooned into the dozens, spreading through visual contact and shared psychological suggestibility. As the numbers mutated from a localized oddity into a civic crisis, the Strasbourg City Council faced a governance vacuum and deferred entirely to the medical guild. Local physicians rejected supernatural possession, diagnosing the affliction as a natural medical condition caused by overheated blood and imbalanced humors, operating on flawed galenic medicine. Doctors reasoned that the only way to cool the brain and blood was to force the patients to dance continuously without interruption until the sickness was literally sweated out of their pores. The city council actively funded and facilitated the mania. They cleared open-air grain markets, requisitioned large guild halls, and ordered carpenters and tanners to construct prominent wooden dancing stages in the heart of the city to keep the victims moving. The city hired professional dancers to hold up fainting sufferers and paid dozens of guild musicians to play drums, fiddles, horns, and pipes 24/7. This auditory backdrop acted as an accidental megaphone for the hysteria, drawing in hundreds of highly stressed, malnourished onlookers who were primed by the rhythm to lose motor control. By mid-August, the city's intervention had backfired spectacularly, turning the central markets into a literal public slaughterhouse of exhaustion. The number of active dancers peaked at roughly 400 individuals. The epidemic was no longer confined to the destitute. It began crossing socio-economic boundaries within the city walls. Historical chronicles from the region note that at its absolute height, the plague was killing an estimated 15 people per day. Sufferers were dying in full view of the public from ruptured blood vessels, strokes, heart attacks, dehydration, and heat stroke. The stages became slick with blood and sweat. Witnesses noted that many of the dancers were screaming in agony, begging for mercy, and fighting violently against anyone who tried to physically restrain them, driven by an absolute internal conviction that they would damn their souls if they stopped moving. Modern interdisciplinary investigations reject medieval folklore, pointing instead to a complex intersection of environment, culture, and neurochemistry. The years leading up to 1518 were devastating for Alsace. The region endured back-to-back crop failures, severe famine, and a brutal winter that left families eating grass to survive. Concurrently, devastating outbreaks of smallpox, leprosy, and the fatal English sweat tore through the city. In 1518, the citizenry held a profound, terrifying belief in Saint Vitus, a Christian martyr capable of cursing sinners with an uncontrollable, fatal dance. Under the crushing weight of existential trauma, individuals fell into a dissociative, trance-like state. Their brains unconsciously acted out the exact physical manifestation of the curse they feared most. Some scientists hypothesized that the town had ingested grain, contaminated with Claviceps purpurea, ergot fungus, a toxic mold containing psychoactive alkaloids. Structurally similar to LSD, ergotism causes gangrene. By severely restricting blood flow to peripheral limbs, it is biologically impossible for individuals suffering from acute ergot poisoning to maintain the superhuman cardiorespiratory stamina required to dance for days on end in midsummer heat. Furthermore, ergot triggers chaotic convulsions, not coordinated rhythmic steps. The plague only ended when the city authorities recognized their logistical errors and pivoted from treating a physical ailment to treating a psychological conviction, realizing that the music and public stages were actively spreading the contagion. The city council executed a total policy reversal. They tore down the wooden stages, prohibited all public dancing, and banned all musical instruments within the city walls under heavy penalty. The city marshals rounded up the surviving dancers, bound them with ropes to restrict their movements, and loaded them into large straw-lined transport wagons. The victims were driven 3 days away into the Vosges mountains to a grotto shrine, dedicated to Saint Vitus near Saverne. At the shrine, priests initiated a highly specific, therapeutic ritual. They led the exhausted victims around a statue of the saint, smeared holy oil on their foreheads, and placed blessed red leather shoes onto their bloody feet. The psychological impact of this ritual was immediate, by reassuring the victims' minds that the saint had accepted their penance and lifted the curse. The subconscious trigger was disarmed. Within days of the mountain ritual, the trances broke, and by mid-September 1518, the dancing stopped completely.